I come from the valley. Born in 1982, our family lived in a simple 3-bedroom bungalow on Old Highway 17, about halfway between Pembroke and Petawawa. My dad worked at the local Chrysler dealership. My mother took care of us kids and later worked as a nurse at the general hospital. Life was simple. When I look back at early settler life here in the valley, I find myself yearning for such a simple existence. Faith, family, hard work, and a community full of spirit. Neighbors depended on each other for survival. Everyone found purpose in their work. Everyone played a role in building a prosperous future. I'm no historian by any means. I rely on those that came before me to tell the stories of the Ottawa Valley. I greatly treasure my collection of local history books. They hold the memories so our past will not be forgotten, from a time when lumber was king, rivers were a highway, and industry thrived. This video is a collection of my travels throughout the valley, searching for remnants of the past, searching for those that came before us. I've always had a curious pull to places that have been forgotten. These places, once full of energy and life, are now forlorn. This is a story of our past, the Forgotten Valley. If there was a heyday in the valley, it was long gone by the time I came onto the scene. My parents would have witnessed the dying days of the logging era, back when logs were still driven down the rivers and boomed to Ottawa by tugboats. Old-timers, mostly my dad and grandparents, would tell us stories about how back in their day there stood an old hotel where we're standing, or about the rock cribs in the water left over from the lumbering days, or the old mill down by the water and the train station they tore down before I was even born. The evidence left behind by the early settlers is all around. I was drawn to these old artifacts as far back as I can remember. They were mysterious. They left questions. They had purpose once, but no longer. Progress has rendered these places useless. In some ways, progress has left us with a debt we must all pay. The fire in the kilns has been extinguished. The water still roars, but the whine of the saw blade has been silenced. Nature is taking back that which belonged to her. Left behind are parts that are no longer needed, skills no one requires, workbenches that collect dust. Technology has changed, but everything we have today was built on their shoulders. The simple days of horse and buggy gave rise to automobiles. Dirt and corduroyed roads were covered in asphalt. Railroads that were once the nucleus of a community were unceremoniously ripped up and bulldozed, sold off for scrap to the highest bidder. The scream of the steam whistle and the chug of the locomotive have fallen silent. Grand wharfs built up to accommodate the steady flow of people and goods transported over the rivers are now nothing more than rotten logs, piles of rock, rusty iron. Economic prosperity was once measured in quantities of board feet or bushels of wheat. But that was another time. The great sawmills along the water's edge, once so strong and mighty, are now nothing more than an eyesore, a pile of decaying foundations slowly returning to nature. Sometimes I like to imagine what it would be like for the previous inhabitants to return to their properties. Would they be able to recognize their old house, now in a pile of rotting lumber? Fences falling down, fields overgrown with weeds and brush. The barn is still standing, missing the roof and doors. A lifetime of back-breaking work and labor, all for naught. No one picked up the plow after they left. No one cared for their barns. No one raised another family between the walls of their simple farmhouse. What would they think of seeing the ravages of time reduce everything they once knew to rubble? Nature is relentless in tearing down what we put up. Eventually, nothing will remain. These places will fade into history, nothing more than a small momentary whisper. What makes old abandoned places fascinating to me is the story they leave behind. If we're lucky, there are some surviving documents we can look back upon. Museums and historical societies have worked quietly in the background, researching, documenting, and preserving our roots. To them we give our thanks. But far too often, simple barns, farmhouses, old general stores, and the regular day-to-day items in our lives go quietly into the night, discarded and forgotten. When I see these places, I always wonder, who was the last person to shut the door? Who was the last person to stoke the fire? Who was the last customer served? I always find abandoned places so puzzling. What happened? Why did the family walk away from their farm and leave everything behind? Why did the business cease operations? In so many cases, the answer is simple. We don't know, and we never will. Time is holding on to those secrets, and we have lost the key. When we look back at our pioneering past, what do we see? What can we learn? So many homes and structures that built our community have been forgotten. Few have been saved. Few have been given the respect they deserve for the foundations they have provided. I take simple pleasure in hunting down the relics of our past. Through pictures and videos, I'm doing what I can to preserve the memory of these forgotten places. This valley we call home is rich in history, full of wild adventures from the log drives to the farmland carved out of the rocky fields. We need to tell our story before this valley truly is forgotten.